one of the main rights that we always forget to use is remaining silent. Say you are remaining silent and actually stay quiet. I think we get caught up in the idea of I want to explain and I want to tell them I didn't do it or whatever the case may be, and we forget that all of those things are being used against us.
I think that's a really important point to bring up, because in our presentation, we have the distinction of knowing your rights, but also knowing what your reality is. And the reality is, being minorities, we're more likely to have our rights infringed by police. So it's also, our main goal is to get home safely. So I think when we're thinking of planning and what's the best do, I think there's a lot of things we have to consider, but our main focus, how do we get home alive?
Welcome to the Know Your Rights Camp podcast. I'm Barbadillo.
And I'm Amir, Whitaker, and with us are our guests today, Nicole Martin, the director for the Autopsy Initiative at Know Your Rights Camp, and local Philadelphia-based attorney, Brianna Shaw. Thanks for joining us, y'all.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
So both of you will be doing the legal presentation for the camp. Is that right?
Yes, we're excited.
Okay, so what is it that you think our youth need to know about their legal rights?
Everything. You know, we have a short amount of time, of course. We have a carefully crafted curriculum. So we first start off with knowing our federal laws as well. So like giving context of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, our amendments, and then Brianna helps us with going over the local Philadelphia laws as well, too. So we're excited to be able to present jointly. So we think it's important to understand kind of the federal and overall kind of rights that we have, but then also understanding how those rights apply in practice. And we also go over hypothetical situations as well to put us in real life situations on what we're doing when we're interacting with police.
Nice. Speaking of local law, Bree, you want to tell us a little more about what you do here and how locally here in Philly might vary from other jurisdictions?
Sure. So I'm a criminal defense attorney here in the city. I also do election law as well. I started my career at the Philly Public Defender's Office. After a few years there, I left and decided to go into private practice. I still take court appointments, so I still represent folks who cannot afford counsel, but also can't be represented by the Public Defender's Office for conflict reasons. So I have both, public and private clients here in Philadelphia.
Nice. And we understand you also have a social work background, is that correct?
Yeah. So I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick.
Right on, likewise. Scarlet Knight.
And I got my degree in social work. So I kind of started my career, working with local foster youth and teaching them about their rights, and adding more, meat on the bones to policies surrounding juvenile justice and foster kids.
Nice.
And are there any particular issues when it comes to the youth, especially in the city, or Black and brown youth, that you see becoming a more prevalent issue going into the future?
Sure. I think social media is really changing the game. I think a lot of kids aren't really thinking about the fact that police can follow them on Instagram, can follow them on X now, and kind of use those things against them in court. I know a lot of times people think that that's entrapment or that, it's being sneaky, but the reality is when you put that information out on the internet, it makes it available for everyone, even people who are using it to charge you.
That is very true. I know LAPD actually watches my Instagram daily. From the LAPD account. They gave up on using burner accounts. But that is something that our youth don't quite understand. So how can young people develop critical thinking skills that will help them better understand their legal rights and responsibilities so that they don't get themselves in trouble, or if they are facing trouble, they don't get themselves deeper into trouble?
I think with critical thinking, it starts with the aspect of problem solving. So how do we solve problems? And the best way to solve problems is having the answers, having the knowledge first. So I Know Your Rights Camp, we really emphasize the importance of having knowledge and knowing our rights and having the right to know our rights and being educated on the relevant laws that are here. So I think the first step is having a general awareness of what the laws are and then understanding more about the outcomes. I think that's where Brianna could talk more about the practical sides of preventative measures that people can take to better protect themselves.
Sure. So definitely want to see more youth watching court. I think people forget that court is a public place, and so anybody can come into a courtroom and watch. And I think for young people that I've seen come and watch court, I think a lot of times they learn a lot from seeing what an actual court case looks like and the kinds of things that lead to someone ending up in a courtroom. As far as locally, I would say the Junior Defender Program with the Public Defender's Office here is actually a great way for young people to get involved. They go to local schools, they teach young people about their rights and kind of remind them about what they should do in those situations. As far as remaining silent, keeping an attorney, I think all of those things will keep young people involved and also ingrain in them the important things to say when they are actually in trouble.
I know it's something that all of us as attorneys know, but I think it's worth hearing again. What happens if you are interacting with police? What should somebody do?
I mean, straight up, they need to remain silent. I think one of the main rights that we always forget to use is remaining silent. Say you are remaining silent and actually stay quiet. I think we get caught up in the idea of I want to explain and I want to tell them I didn't do it or whatever the case may be, and we forget that all of those things are being used against us. Always ask for a lawyer. I think a lot of times with young people, they're more inclined to ask for their parents, and it can make it difficult for them to kind of have that muscle memory to ask specifically for counsel. So I think those two things are probably the primary things that I want young people to kind of remember in those situations.
Right. I found if you remind the youth that anything they say to their parents that are overheard by police can be used against them, that they sort of remember, maybe I ask for my parents second.
Yeah.
Maybe I ask
Right.
for a lawyer first and my parents second.
Yeah, but sometimes I've also noticed, though, they use tactics with young people specifically, and it's not just about knowledge of the law, but it's like controlling your emotions, too, because they'll try to evoke an emotional response, keep saying things to, make you violate your own rights, too.
Right. I think that's a really important point to bring up because in our presentation, we have the distinction of knowing your rights, but also knowing what your reality is. And the
Right.
reality is, being minorities, we're more likely to have our rights infringed by police. So it's also our main goal is to get home safely. So I think when we're thinking of planning and what's the best do, I think there's a lot of things we have to consider, but our main focus, how do we get home alive? How do we get home
Exactly.
safe? And that goes back to our 10 points of our right to be free and our right to be alive, because that's our ultimate goal is for everyone to get home safely. And oftentimes we're not that fortunate to have that luxury of getting home safely.
Right. It's unfortunate. So many people have been murdered while within their rights, while exercising their rights within this democracy. But Know Your Rights Camp, they're doing a lot of innovative different things when it comes to law. So what role does innovation play with civil rights and law, and what are some of the initiatives that y'all are doing?
Yeah, well, I can speak about our Know Your Rights Camp Autopsy Initiative, and we are the only program in the world currently giving free second autopsies to victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. And so how we created the Autopsy Initiative was due to Colin Kaepernick, our founder, who wanted to be able to provide direct and immediate relief to victims' families who have lost their loved one in such a tragic way. So we are providing these free second autopsies. We have our own independent team of pathologists who are performing the autopsies because we realize the amount of bias that can be within the autopsy process itself. So we have our own independent pathologists who are able to be objective in determining what the cause of death determination is. And then we also have that put them directly in contact with the victim's family or attorney, and then they will then issue their final cause of death determination. And so we've now provided 94 autopsies
Wow.
since we launched our program in 2022.
Amazing.
So that's one of Know Your Right Camp's initiatives. Are there any similar initiatives happening in Philly, or not necessarily an autopsy initiative, but something to sort of close the gap between rights and reality?
Sure. I mean, I know I already mentioned Junior Defenders, but quite frankly, I think that is one of the best programs for that. I also see different organizations like the Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project, YSRP. They do a lot of work surrounding youth who are charged as adults and trying to humanize them with the courts, but also provide them with more of that education to help them navigate the legal system and to make sure that they don't end up back in the kinds of situations that brought them to the program in the first place. Here, there's a myriad of programs, but I think those two stand out to me, I guess, especially when we think about young people.
I also wanted to talk about our Know Your Rights Camp app as well,
Yes.
too.
That's what I was like,
something-
that's one of the most
Yeah.
innovative things.
Yes, definitely with innovation, we have to talk about the app because it is very unique, and we do have a breakdown of state by state, knowing that we have our federal laws, but each state have different laws. So we wanted to make sure that our youth felt comfortable when going to a different state of knowing what their rights are when it comes to protest rights and traffic stops. And we've seen oftentimes how something as minor as a traffic stop can lead to someone's death. So it is really important that, and I recommend that everyone downloads our Know Your Rights Camp app to understand how our laws vary and to stay up to date with all of our new kind of Know Your Rights Camp projects, and everything we have is on that app. So we definitely recommend everyone downloading that.
It's such an accessible way to make the information available to young people and different things. Because I mean, I worked for the ACLU, and for years we've been doing these Know Your Rights pamphlets and different things. That's like kind of old school when you're out on the street passing out pamphlets.
Right.
But now we've had to pivot to different things on social media, the apps, and different things, because that's how people access information. And even the apps themselves embedding ways to contact folks or document the police interactions and different things. Technology is definitely a part of the movement for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I appreciate that the more people know their rights and the more accessible we make this knowledge, the more we have people thinking critically out there, right? And keeping each other safe. Because yes, we keep us safe, but we're much safer when we know how to keep each other safe.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate the work that both of y'all are doing. Super appreciate it. I just wanted to ask you both another question. All of us up here are attorneys. We probably don't look like typical attorneys, and I think it's important for youth to realize that they can see themselves in these professions and that these professions can give back to the community. So how important is that for you, knowing that these roles are typically part of the system, but you can flip that script?
I'll let you go first.
Sure. It's super important. I know for me, there are not many Black women defense attorneys in this city. I would say there's maybe 4 of us. So I know for me, it is very important to help young folks of color get access to the courts. I personally take interns and mentees. I encourage other folks to do so, and I try to collaborate with judges here who make it a point to take students of color under their wing. Because I agree, I do think that there's so many people who do not look like us, who are walking the halls of the courthouse every day and who really don't understand the day-to-day lives of the youth that live in this city. So for me, I think any opportunity or measure that we can take to try to bring them in, I'm all about it, especially with things like Know Your Rights Camp. I think this is how we get them involved, right? Is that we see them in these kinds of programs.
Nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think representation is critical. I know that the legal profession is not dominated by any means by minorities, so we need more representation in our Black and brown communities. I think that another point to emphasize as well is that you can also be a lawyer and a good, compassionate person. I think a lot of times when people think about lawyers, they're thinking very like cutthroat or not necessarily having the most positive interaction with the lawyers, which I can understand. I think that there are some, like any profession, there are going to be great ones. There's going to be ones who maybe don't have the best side of morality and ethics. So I think that what's also unique about us on this panel is that we all are genuinely good, charismatic people who truly do want to make a change and resonate with Know Your Rights Camp mission to really elevate our next generation of change leaders. And I think the fact of us even being here, being in these spaces is motivating on its own for people to see that we are all attorneys. We all don't look alike, but we all still have a common goal of wanting to serve and help people. So I think that's an important distinction to make as well, too, as character.
Oh, yeah. And can we share a little more about our paths as attorneys? Attorneys, I would love to hear what made you transition from being a social worker to an attorney. And you're probably still a social worker in here in some ways, right? Because it's not like you can just hang that up. But what was our paths to this profession?
Sure. So I actually became an attorney because I grew up in the foster care system and I got really into going to court for myself. I realized that most of the things in my life changed when I went to court and I actually advocated for myself because I didn't really like how people were making decisions for me and I didn't seem to be involved in that decision-making process. So once I realized that I could make those changes by going to court myself and advocating for myself, I really started to love going to court. And I taught other kids how to do it. I joined the Youth Advisory Board program, which is a program out in Jersey. That increases protections and improves policies for youth in foster care. It also had a Know Your Rights component through Rutgers Law School. So that was primarily how I started out. And then as I got older, I worked to build up that program and increase and make it more robust. And that really started my transition into law generally, because I knew I liked being in court. I knew I liked helping people. But I think criminal defense was nice because it was a little bit away from the personal aspect of foster care for me. I was able to take myself out of it a little bit and make it more about others, which is what made me want to become a lawyer in the first place. So that was really generally how I ended up becoming a defense attorney.
Nice.
I manifested being here in the seat today. Yeah, I wanted to work with Colin since 2016. In undergrad, I wrote my senior thesis on race and consequences in examination of police abuse. And that was the first year that they had their first Know Your Rights camp. So I've been following Know Your Rights camp since 2016 when I did my thesis. And I knew that I wanted to choose a career where I could help people. So I fell in love with law and learning about what the law is. And so I knew that I wanted to be in a space where I could directly help and serve my community. And so I felt that law was a great way to do so. And I think that we talked a lot about learning what the law is to empower us. And I wanted to be able to be an advocate for my community. So I knew that I wanted to be in the social justice space. I also had an interest in minority business growth as well. And so I also got my LLM in intellectual property after law school. And I did a lot of research of understanding the discrepancies in minority communities in obtaining different IP rights, such as having trouble obtaining patents, not getting their trademarks granted as well too. So I think that in every social issue, we can always look at it from a race and societal stance. I was a sociology major, so I think we just look at things differently through that lens. So I think there's so many areas of advocacy that I wanted to be involved in, but now being the legal program director for the Autopsy Initiative, I know that I'm supposed to be in this space, and I'm so grateful for the team and staff that we have at Know Your Rights Camp, which I think makes our program so unique to have all of our staff genuinely caring about helping people. And I think that's such a rare place to be in. So I truly do love the work that I do here at Know Your Rights Camp.
It's amazing. Thanks. I have a slightly more love-hate relationship with the law.
Yeah.
I got into law school and realized what the system looks like the legal school, the law school system. Mm-hmm. And I fell out of love so quickly with law. Mm-hmm. Until I came across intellectual property, which is more like a passion project. Mm-hmm. But then it's when you realized what I didn't like about law, I needed to turn that on its head. What I didn't like about the law was that it's very exclusive. Only a certain people know about it, and for the most part, it's gate-kept. Mm-hmm. You gatekeep the law and what people need to know so that what you know is somehow more rare. But once you turn that on its head, like, oh, if I have the knowledge, let me give it out for free. That's when I was able to find the love part of my relationship with the law and using that social justice lens and figuring out how I can help people know their rights, how I can advocate for protesters, community organizers, and sort of give people that freedom that they don't have to worry about what if I do this. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have quite the path to understanding how I do love this crazy law path, but I'm glad that I was able to turn what I hated about the law on its head for the benefit of others.
Definitely, that's amazing. Yeah. And we have to hear about you.
You asked it, you got to answer.
Yeah. We're not leaving you out.
Well, it's similar to Bree, where my experience is a directly impacted person in the juvenile justice system. I remember the first time I was arrested, I was given a public defender, several public defenders, and a different dynamic. The first one just was not available and barely talked to me. The second one was my champion, literally the only one in my corner, because both my parents were incarcerated at the time. I was going back and forth between grandparents, and as a 15-year-old going through that, it was difficult. So that was the first lawyer I ever met. But I still did not want anything to do with law, even when I was in law school, actually. I didn't go to law school until I was doing my dissertation, and the research was on the school-to-prison pipeline, and I just saw my life and how it connected and the path I was put on. And so I said maybe law, but I'm still not married here like this. The love thing. This is, we'll see. But I really love the innovative things that the Know Your Rights Camp does, and just this national movement it's doing with the camps, coming here to Philly and working with amazing attorneys like Bree and doing local stuff. So thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Nicole and Bree, for joining us, and thank you to everyone else tuning in. Be sure to watch us on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on social media at Your Rights Camp. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Know Your Rights Camp. And if you'd like more information, please visit us at knowyourrightscamp.org. See you next time.